Your Honor, in this case, on March 17, 2020, Mrs. Gagliano committed the offense of disorderly conduct in the County Commission office, well, right here in the courthouse. The commissioners are meeting, Your Honor. The evidence will show that, and the video evidence, which speaks for itself, will show that the defendant was upset with the County Commission decisions regarding COVID and certain shutdown of businesses, and she approached Mike Cahill, the assistant for the commission, who was taking notes over on that side of the courtroom, and intentionally coughed 3 times, and the video statement will show that. There's nothing that would show that was physically offensive. It was not a joke. The testimony of the commissioners, Mr. Cahill, will be that this was physically offensive, and that the defendant did this knowingly.
Thank you, Your Honor. It is the position of the defense that Ms. Gagliano is not guilty of the crime of disorderly conduct. Your Honor, I would ask the court to take note of the statutory construction of the disorderly conduct statute, and the fact that she is in fact charged under the subsection, quote, creating a hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act that serves no legitimate purpose. Now, it's important to note that because typically disorderly conduct cases are based on, quote, loud or unusual noises, or quarreling or fighting or things of that nature, but none of those subsections would apply to the facts of this case. And so I'm going to ask the court to focus on the language of that subsection. That is the subsection she is charged under. That is the only subsection she is charged under. That's the only subsection that these facts could remotely fit with. And of course, as this court is aware, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt, not by a preponderance of the evidence, but beyond a reasonable doubt, each and every one of the elements of the crime, just the same as if this were a murder case or any other criminal case. Now, the facts in this case will show that to what extent Ms. Gagliano was communicating a message to the county commissioners on the day of the incident, March 17th of this year, that her communication to them was a communication as pertains to this issue of COVID. She had made clear on prior occasions, the evidence will show, that she believes it is in effect a hoax. She may or may not be wrong about that, but having previously made that clear, this act of, quote, coughing, which the defense will contend did not occur in the near vicinity of anyone else, as the video will show, but that this act of coughing was all part of her broader message as pertains to this issue. It was clear that she was not happy with decisions the commissioners had previously made pertaining to the management of the COVID issue, and it therefore would be clear to anyone in the room, knowing that this, quote, coughing was her part of her broader point she was trying to make as pertains to the COVID issue. Why is this important? It doesn't necessarily mean you get to go around coughing. Certainly one doesn't get to go around, quote, spreading COVID, but there would be no rational reason to believe that she actually had COVID. And so this act of coughing was a message. It was sending a message. Everyone knows it. No one's ever even brought up whether she actually had COVID, whether she may actually have been spreading COVID. Nobody's ever accused her of that. The evidence will show. And so it comes down to the language in the statute. Did her, quote, act, even if deemed by someone as, quote, physically offensive, did that act, quote, serve no legitimate purpose? Theoretically, she could engage in an act which was, quote, physically offensive, if that was the case here. And still, if that, quote, physically offensive act served a legitimate purpose, then she did not commit the offense of disorderly conduct. The state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that act served no legitimate purpose. And I would contend to the court that in the context of how that message was sent, it did serve a legitimate purpose. Just because no one else in the room may have agreed with it doesn't mean it served no legitimate purpose. If it was intended to convey a message, popular or not, the conveyance of that message is the service of a legitimate purpose, in which case her conduct simply did not meet the definition of disorderly conduct. Thank you. Over the course of hundreds of meetings, other than this occasion, has anyone offended you?
Oh, we've had arguments.
Okay? Do you expect to go in these meetings, maybe get offended?
It depends on the meeting.
People say things you don't agree with,
Yes.
sometimes to the point that they offend you.
Yeah.
Do you tolerate it?
Yeah.
Why?
Part of the job.
Part of the job.
Yeah, you try not to let it get to you.
Part of the job to tolerate when people are sending messages you find offensive.
Yes, sir.
Trial. I want to commend both parties for putting on a very good trial. Very respectful. I appreciate that. Now it comes down to me. And I did read your briefs. In fact, I read them a couple times. I read you.
You said you were trying to send a message. Would you articulate the message essentially being sent by that act?
Yes. And it was directed toward the commissioners.
Okay. And what is how would you articulate that message? The point you were trying to
That it was ridiculous how far they were pushing it. And my cough didn't mean anything, a cough. Nobody even knew at that point how it was spread. It was all speculation that it was going to be like that. It'd be a cough or a sneeze. But an intention clearing your throat, okay, does that mean I've heard people do that. They're trying to get somebody's attention, but I was also trying to say, this is ridiculous what you're doing.
Do you believe you were projecting particles in the direction of Mr. Cahill when you did this coughing?
No,
Why not?
because first of all, I did not cough at him. I did not get up to walk to him. And I must have a super lady cough to get anything that far. Even if I spit, I couldn't get that far.
So, even if this court concludes that she created a physically offensive condition, as you're aware, Judge, they have to prove every word in the statute. They charged her under subsection H. Even if the court concludes that there was a hazardous condition, which there's no facts and evidence to suggest that, or physically offensive condition, like any act that serves no legitimate purpose. In other words, this court can conclude, just as a jury could, that Ms. Gagliano was being offensive, and that she was being offensive by, quote, creating a physically offensive condition. And we know that because she offended people. But guess what, Judge? They still have to prove that her offending people by her act served no legitimate purpose. Not a minimal legitimate purpose, but no legitimate purpose whatsoever. And I don't know how they can say that when they're all essentially conceding she was trying to make a statement. She was trying to make a point.
I went through this, well, I didn't consult anybody, maybe I should have. I'll tell you, going over the disorderly conduct, with the purposely and knowingly, and, was it intentionally? I don't know. And based on the believability of all the witnesses, I think they were all, and it is a scary situation. Scary for me, scary for each and every one of us. have the right to speak, just like they said. You can be disruptive and that, but that's part of the people up there talking to the commissioners. Because, my wife has gone to those commission meetings. I don't go to them. She speaks her mind. Now it comes down to after considering, like I say, believability of the witnesses and that, I do find the defendant guilty.
It's Tim with Conservative News of Montana and Redoubt News, and we are here in Granite County in front of the courthouse where the judge here just ruled on a case regarding COVID-19 and what's going on with local government. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the attorney that was taking this case and did some work here on behalf of the people.
Hi, this is Matt Stevenson, attorney for Elena Gagliano. Elena was just convicted of disorderly conduct by the Justice of the Peace in a bench trial by the judge. She was also sentenced, simply fined to $285 in fines and surcharges. Not the end of the world. It's disorderly conduct. The issue is that she intentionally coughed in the courtroom after having given repeated statements of basically her objections to Granite County commissioners handling and or adoption of policies pertaining to COVID back in March of this year. She intentionally coughed. There was never any evidence presented that she had COVID or was ill in any way, which she was not. And so the issue was whether her intentionally coughing, subsequent claims by the commissioners that there was concern for their health because of her coughing, is really the issue. The fact is there was never any actual demonstration of a risk. And so the issue really came down to whether you can make the statement, a political statement, by coughing. Effectively, every witness conceded that that was apparently her purpose, was making a political statement. And whether or not doing so, it constitutes disorderly conduct. Ms. Gagliano was charged under the subsection of the statute that she, quote, created a physically offensive condition which, quote, served no legitimate purpose. I respect the judge's ruling. I think it's fair to say that a rational person could conclude she, quote, created a physically offensive condition. The issue that I take, the part of which I take greater issue is whether her creation of a physically offensive condition served no legitimate purpose. The state has to prove all of that, and it remains my position, in my opinion, that clearly because she was coughing intentionally to make a political statement at that moment and for no other purpose, that her act did serve a legitimate purpose. And to say that it didn't is effectively to say that because her purpose was disagreed with, that it was therefore not legitimate. And of course, this is the United States, and we shouldn't be concluding that people who disagree with us have nothing legitimate to say simply because we disagree with them.